What's up everyone, Adam from Cape Crawlers, and today we're doing a build overview of Snaggletooth the Deadbolt. Old Snaggletooth has changed quite a bit since the last build video that I did last summer. So this video is going to be a follow-up to go over the modifications that I've done since that video and pull everything together and put a comprehensive build sheet together for you guys, which I'll put down in the description. Now Snaggletooth was the third crawler that I ever got. It was my third SCX24. Got it used on the Facebook marketplace. I got a really good deal on it, and it already had some modifications on it. It had the mofo chassis on it, wheels and tires, and shocks. I think that was it. Also had a Torque Beast 30 motor in it. So it was lightly modified, but because it had the chassis, it was really my first pretty hardcore build because I was able to build upon that LCG chassis kit, the ugly AF chassis kit, and build Snaggletooth into my best performer. Some of my builds have eclipsed Snaggletooth as far as capabilities go, but it still remains one of my best performing, all around best performing crawlers that I have, and is definitely one of my favorites. So because I love it so much and because it's changed so much, I thought it was a good time to do a build update. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to jump into this. If you've not seen my build videos before, I do this in 3 parts. We're going to look at the exterior and the appearance. We're going to look at the chassis and suspension, and we're going to look at the drivetrain. Now I'll throw in run footage throughout so you can see this glorious thing in action. I'll explain the modifications that I did and why throughout the video, and then we'll wrap it up with my final thoughts on this thing. So let's kick this off. Let's look at the exterior and the appearance. First off, before I get going, the name Snaggletooth, if you're not familiar with Snaggletooth, comes from the original body that this thing had. Started life as this green deadbolt. I put these stickers on here from Frills and Fringe on eBay, but the name really comes from the front. See, I had to cut the grill out to fit one of my big servos that I put on here, and it ended up making these teeth in the front, which is where the name Snaggletooth came from. And it stuck, and it still sticks. I have this body, I can kind of swap them out if I want, but that's where the name came from. Snaggletooth today looks very different because we've got this beautiful custom painted Betty body from Big Mountain Customs, who I'll link down below. James over at Big Mountain also did my Ripper build, so this is our second project together, and I really love the body. It's got this metallic bronze with the purple skull on it, just very cool. Following the body, I ended up changing the wheels and tires, and I put these satin bronze Little Guy Racing Parts Ghost beadlock wheels wrapped in the Little Guy Racing Parts Swamp King tires, which are still my favorite tires. I run them on a lot of different rigs. I'm running the stock foams that come in these tires. I haven't changed out the foams, and the wheels themselves are vented, so you can hear that. So the tires I did not vent. I usually vent my tires, but I didn't have to in this case because the Little Guy Racing Parts wheels are vented. Now, because the chassis doesn't allow for a front and rear bumper, there's not a lot of other aesthetic upgrades on this thing. The rest is pretty much in the chassis and suspension. So why don't we make a quick pivot over to the chassis and suspension. We'll spend some more time there. Taking a look at the chassis and suspension, this is where a lot of the magic is on this build here. So like I said, it's running the mofo ugly AF aluminum chassis here. This is a great low center of gravity chassis. As you can see, it's got the battery tray up front. It's got a good angle on it. Very versatile chassis. It's got lots of spots for your shock placements. Just lots and lots of customization, and a very well designed and functional chassis. I have this on a couple of rigs and I really like it. I retrofit some magnet mounts underneath this Velcro. The Betty body is hung on with Velcro. Underneath here are magnet mounts that I use for the body. For suspension, I'm running just some generic Amazon shocks. I think these are RC Lions that I got from Amazon. They've served this thing really well. I haven't changed them. They work great. They don't bind. They function great. I don't have any drive shaft issues at full extension. So these have just served me really well, and I've kept them since I got the build. I also like them because the orange on them matches the motor, which we'll get into in a little bit. For steering components on this, so Snaggletooth is a 4-wheel steer setup that is new from the last video that we did. Not only is it 4-wheel steering, it's running these monstrous Reefs 179 smart servos. These are incredibly powerful. Snaggle is able to run these at a high voltage because of the brushless system, and this thing can virtually dance off the table. These servos are so powerful. So I've got a Reefs 179 at both ends with the aluminum horn on here as well. Steering linkage up front, I've got the Mofo RC brass steering link in the front. I've got a hot racing steering link in the back. I wanted just a little bit more weight up front with the brass unit. That's why I kept that up there. Also for the servo mounts, I should have mentioned these earlier, but for the servo mounts, I'm running the Mofo RC best servo mount ever. I really needed to do that to incorporate the big Reef servos here. So I've got an aluminum one at both ends here. This is a great servo mount because it's really versatile. It's got the adjustable posts on it, and it's flat across the back, across the linkage, so it's able to fit these really big, longer servos and not have them protrude out very far past your steering linkage. I used to run flex extensions on this in the rear, but since doing the four-wheel steering and the portal axles on it, I had to get rid of those. So it's not running any flex extensions or anything like that. I've just got these 43mm shocks, and I've positioned them in a way that works for me, gives it plenty of articulation, not to the extreme like some of my other rigs, but it still has a lot. So quite a bit of flex on this thing. I'm running Endura high clearance links, the aluminum linkage all throughout. Now I'm running the Deadbolt length in the rear, and I'm running the C10 length in the front. So this is stretched in the front. This is my favorite linkage combination. I think this is virtually a perfect wheelbase combo, and I really love how this thing performs. So to do that is very simple. Just buy the C10 or the JLU links and the drive shaft, which is what I've done here. So I think that's going to wrap it up for chassis and suspension. So let's take a look at the drivetrain of this thing. All right, let's look at the drivetrain on this thing. So the drivetrain has been completely overhauled. There's virtually no stock components on this thing whatsoever. Let's start with probably the coolest part, which is the motor. So this is running the Mofo RC SMP, the slow motion pancake brushless motor. I love this motor. It is so silky smooth and incredibly powerful. One of my favorite brushless motors for sure. It's just got such a great linear power band that starts so low, and you just ride that wave of torque right up to the top end, and it's just super smooth and incredibly fun to drive. Now I power that thing with the brand new FuriTech Python ESC. Now for a long time I was running the FuriTech Lizard Ultimate, which was able to run the 8.4 volts to the servo, but I just recently got my hands on this new FuriTech Python, which is what I'm running. This is excellent, puts out a ton of power, fully customizable with the FuriTech FuriCar app, so I'm able to tune my throttle curve with this motor, change my outputs to my servos. Just a great set of electronics here. Mated to the FuriTech ESC is the micro receiver, so I run this on the FuriTech Avatar transmitter. The micro receiver is great. I'm able to just tuck it back here. It takes up very, very little space. The electronics combo takes up very little room at all, so I'm very happy with this. I'm able to just stick it on the back here, and it fits perfect and works fantastic. Underneath here, so if we look at the drivetrain underneath, drive shafts are steel. I think I'm doing an OGRC in the back. I can't remember the name of the front. It was just another generic Amazon one. But I did the steel drive shafts because when I put the brushless system in, I was snapping the plastic ones off like crazy. So I reinforced it with the steel units here. For axles, this is now running the RC all-wheel drive brass portal axles, front and rear. These are all brass, very heavy, about 85 grams a piece. They're also very wide, which is what gives it that big track width. I'm running stock gears in the differentials. I was running 23% overdrive in the front. I might go back to that again just because I like to have the wheels spin faster in the front for climbing and for slight improvement to turning radius. But right now it's just running the stock ratios because I just put these axles on. These things come with the heavy brass diff covers. Just a very cool upgrade here. That's a very new upgrade to Snaggletooth, which I'm still trying to sort out whether I want to do smaller tires or change the chassis up a bit, but it seems to be performing really well despite the chassis being elevated from the portals. Also inside the transmission, I'm running the stock transmission housing, but I've put steel transmission gears in here. Again, because when I did the brushless system, it was just shredding all of the composite parts that were on there from the factory. So every time that I broke something, I replaced it with metal, which now gives it the full metal drivetrain, and it's pretty bulletproof now. I mentioned the axles, but one of the things that I did with the axles too was because the stubs are so long on these portal axles, I was able to sneak in these heavy brass hexes here on the front. Now, these are Mofo RC, real heavy brass hexes on here. And in the back, I just did some generic smaller brass hexes in here. So it did, again, add a little bit more width. The portal axles themselves are really wide, but then I added about 4 millimeters or so with the extended hexes, which again gives it that wide track. And I almost feel like that's necessary with these axles, because otherwise you'd have this big stub hanging out past the wheel. So I did it both for performance and for aesthetics on this. But I think that's going to wrap it up for the drivetrain. The drivetrain on this is probably one of my favorite setups that I've got. It's just incredibly powerful, incredibly fun to drive, so smooth and capable. Just a really, really fun build. Alright guys, that's going to wrap it up for the build overview of Snaggletooth the Deadbolt. As you can see, it's changed a lot since the last build overview that we did. And I gotta say, the more this thing evolves, the more I love it. This current evolution that she sits in right now is just so incredibly fun to drive. It is so smooth and so capable. With the portal axles, it's able to get up and over really gnarly terrain. With that brushless system, has that incredibly smooth, capable powertrain. And this custom painted body by Big Mountain Customs, tied together with these satin bronze Little Guy Racing Parts wheels, the whole thing just comes together so well, and I just love it so much. Definitely one of my favorite builds of all time, for sure. I do kind of miss the Snaggletooth Deadbolt body. I might have to have James do me a custom Deadbolt body. I don't know. What do you think? What do you guys think of the bodies? Let me know in the comments down below which body you prefer. And also let me know in the comments too if there's any other builds that you'd like to see me do a refresh on, another build overview on. I'm happy to dive into whatever you guys want to see. So I'll put the build list with the links in the description down below for you guys if you want to check out any of the parts that I've used on this build. I'll also put down James from Big Mountain Customs' email if you want to hit him up for custom paint work. Highly recommend it. As always, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you haven't done so, and I will see you in the next video.